I'm one of the people who listens to popular music all the time and delights in the idea that in so many songs written by so many artists, I can hear the church, right? I can hear gospel music in Prince. I could hear it, of course, in Aretha. I can hear it in Demi Lovato or Chance the Rapper.
Right.
It really is part of American music. This history of gospel, but nowhere do you hear it more, of course, than in the blues, and the
Right.
connection between those two is really something special.
Right. Well, absolutely, Stephen. I mean, when you think about American music, if you were to come up with a metaphor of a tree, that all of these different styles that you just mentioned are the branches, and the trunk is the blues, but even deeper in the ground would be the roots,
Yeah,
and the roots, that's the spiritual.
yeah,
So not only do you, because you can hear, you can hear it in Debbie Lovato, or you can hear it in, just name whoever, because it's all sort of rooted in the Black spiritual, and then comes up through the blues and branches out through everything else.
yeah, yeah. So, as a reverend and a musician, talk about how you navigate those connections and how they kind of spill over, I guess, from one line of work into the other.
Well, I was really blessed. I'm a native Detroiter, but I was blessed to have this grandmother from Southern Alabama, from Connecticut County, Alabama, who loved many, many kinds of music. So aside from going to and growing up in the Black church, she had no problem with putting some Muddy Waters or Lightning Hopkins or BB King on the Magnavox and entertaining the entire block. So I grew up with like both of those influences. And I really feel fortunate that if I had just been a church kid, I may not have been able to make the connection with the blues. And if I had just been sort of a kid who listened to nothing but blues, I probably wouldn't hear that. But being this hybrid kid allows me to view both of those kind of musics in a sense without prejudice, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I can see the connections, and I've really been blessed by the connections
Yeah.
between both the sacred and the secular.
Yeah. The blues is about people expressing pain and sadness through music, and gospel is usually about healing and hope. Those two things would seem to be at odds in some ways. I've always felt like though there is a connection between the messages as well as the music itself.
Definitely something happens with the spiritual, which is the music that came out of slavery, which was heavy, which was about, getting heaven when you die, or
Mhm.
suffering, or being resilient and enduring. And then the blues was kind of like about the idea of not suffering on the plantation, but hopping a train and getting away from all of that stuff. And then in like around 1930, they melded into this music called gospel. You
Mhm.
had these sort of blues musicians who were looking at how the vitality was slipping out of sacred music, and they combined the blues with the sacred, and that produced gospel, which you rightly identified as being joyous music, right?
Mhm.
It's the good news, but there is no joy without some pain, right?
Yeah,
Weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
yeah,
So you have both of those elements mixed in, and I think the sacred and the secular really grew up right next to each other.
Hmm.
And if your socialization was to be steady, to raise a family, to endure the hardships that you were given, folks pushed you toward the sacred. But if your inclination was, I'm gonna, escape from this situation I'm in, and I'm gonna enjoy some life while I'm here, your inclination was toward the blues. But strangely enough, they always have this symbiotic relationship. The greatest gospel singers tend to come out of the blues, and the greatest instrumentalists come out, or is that the other way around? The greatest instrumentalists come out of the blues, the greatest singers come out of the church.
Yeah, yeah. So if you think about both gospel and blues, they've had time periods where they were more popular than they are right now. And I guess some people might say that they are becoming more and more lost art forms, especially as people leave the church or don't react or interact with the church the same way they used to. And blues is not as prevalent on the airwaves or anywhere as it used to be. But how do you feel about that?
I think these are foundational forms, and they keep reinventing themselves. They find a way to push through because they don't go away. I mean, chances are, if you're a young singer, the first place that somebody told you that you could sing was in church.
Was church,
right?
Yeah.
Right. So I was having a conversation with a young lady the other day at the Henry Ford Museum, and she was amazed that the new Elvis movie, which of course has to feature a lot of blues, has a cover of a tune done by Big Mama Thornton called Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, but it is redefined by Doja Cat. so it doesn't go away. Right. It just sort of morphs into something else. And the difficulty is sometimes finding the strand, finding why Ludacris has Leadbelly's Pick a Bale of Cotton in a song called Rosa Parks.
Right.
How does that work?
That's right. I also want to talk about the fact that these are uniquely African American art forms, and they remind us, I think, when you were talking about the modern influences that we see for them, they're a reminder of how much, if not all, of American music really owes its existence and finds its roots in the African-American experience and therefore in African-American music.
Definitely. One of the things that I think we don't necessarily appreciate at first listening is that this music went far beyond entertainment. It was music that allowed you to work in rhythm. It was music that conveyed life messages of just, wisdom of how men and women interact with one another. It was poetry, and it carried a technology of work. I think that one of the reasons that African Americans were as resilient as they were in a system like slavery was they learned how to make the music keep their bodies moving, how to put their mind somewhere else, in spite of the backbreaking labor that they were dealing with, right? Those are functions that come from African music, translated through American experience, and we don't really think about it very much until we find ourselves using it.
Yeah.
So that when you have a time of crisis, I remember during 9/11, folks were singing spirituals. They were singing, "We shall overcome, we are not afraid," all those kind of things, because it's useful. And when the use, you find that not only is it beautiful and it's resilient, but it's useful. And it comes back when you need it. And then there is the idea too, I think, of no matter what the era, when you hear that voice that carries the African American singing aesthetic, when you hear Fantasia Barrino, you instantly know that's a church girl. I don't care what she's singing, right? she got the sanctified church right there with her. She kicks off her shoes. She lets the Spirit have his way. And there is an experience in the Black church called singing yourself happy, right? So at a certain point, not only does the music serve as entertainment, but it also can serve to sing yourself happy
Yeah.
when you need that technology.